Hi, I'm Jaclyn.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
We tried really hard to come up with a different intro for you guys today, but it's just not there, you know? We tried to come up with a corny joke, and we either couldn't decide on a really good one, or we couldn't remember the whole joke, or, so I'm just gonna say welcome back.
Yeah, we sat here for a good 10 minutes being like, what is there? What is it? Don't know.
Yeah, so, we're just going to stick with our normal intro, unless you guys give us some good suggestions of other intros, or send us your best bad jokes, and we will tell those. So,
yeah. And we'll give you a shout out that you gave it to us, too. So
yes.
This
Definitely.
is a mutually beneficial interaction.
Definitely. So, yeah, if you guys are in the United States or, again, the rest of the world, you know that officially, unofficially, the United States election has been called. Again, by the time this comes out, who knows what will have transpired. So it seems pretty official, but there also seem to be more things in the works. So who knows?
Yeah, because I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of recounts, which is fine. That's part of an election. If it's close, recount it. That's fine with me. You just have to count every vote. That's the only thing. If it's a legal vote, you can count it.
Exactly. But recount does not mean throwing out the votes that were not for you, just in case that's not clear.
Yeah. So hopefully by the time this is released, there will be no question, but I don't think either of us are hopeful that that's going to happen.
No.
I think it's going to be Inauguration Day, and Trump is still going to be like, excuse me, no. So maybe he'll surprise me, maybe he won't. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, it's settled. Or you're going to hear in a week or two us talking about the shit show that's happening, which is more likely.
True. Also, how weird is it for you guys when the episodes come out a couple weeks later, and so the things that we're talking about are outdated, and you know that by the time it comes out? Is that weird? Let us know. Let us know how you feel listening to it.
I've wondered that too. Because I know My Favorite Murder, for example, records the night before, and sorry guys, we cannot do that at all. There's no way I can stay up editing an episode like that. But yeah, I always wanted to know, do you guys mind? Is it a good little blast from the past? Oh, I forgot this happened? Or is it okay, this is 2 weeks old, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because I'm sure I think most podcasts record closer to their release date, obviously, because they have, whole production teams who can get it ready to go, and that's their whole job. So, by the time so when they release information, it's all the current news cycles, and so you listen to all your podcasts in 1 week that talk about the same thing, and then here comes old Caffeinated Crimes 3 weeks later talking about it, so let us know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, it's difficult too. I mean, once I make enough money to quit my job and be a full-time podcaster, I will take on the editing and we can record closer to time, and I'll do that for y'all. But at the moment, I've had a very busy weekend and there was no way I could do it.
Yes, so if you guys want timely episodes with timely news events, you can head on over to patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, and maybe one day we'll be able to make that happen. So
yeah, plug.
But we did, timing-wise, because we do plan when the episodes are going to come out, we did want to do a Thanksgiving-themed episode, because when you guys are hearing this, it will be the week of Thanksgiving. So happy early Thanksgiving. I hope you guys are able to celebrate with loved ones in whatever way that means to you. But we wanted to do the infamous D.B. Cooper case today.
If you're a Patreon, stay tuned. Hopefully on Thanksgiving, you'll have a little bonus coming your way. If you want that, again, as Jaclyn said, patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes. There'll be a little Thanksgiving bonus.
And all of the bonuses are there forever, so if you guys are listening to this 3 weeks later, you can still go on and you can still hear that Thanksgiving bonus as well as all of our previous bonus episodes. So they don't go anywhere, so they're all there ready for you. We'll be there forever. So today's sources came from the FBI website, a KUOW news article, the Imaginative Conservative article, History.com, Gizmodo, and the New York Magazine. So several different sources as far as some different theories and speculation in the later years. So November 24th, 1971, which was 49 years ago today, if you were listening to this on the day that this episode is released.
Ooh.
It was the day before Thanksgiving, and a man paid $18.52 for an airline ticket from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. He had dark hair and was dressed in a black raincoat, a dark suit with a thin black tie, a white shirt, and brown loafers. So I guess they didn't care about mixing black and brown in 1971, but I still don't, so it's fine. So he signed for the ticket as Dan Cooper. And remember, in the 70s, you didn't have to show ID or anything like that to buy a plane ticket, so we don't know.
And I'm pretty sure at this time, isn't it like when you could literally buy life insurance before getting on a plane?
I don't know.
You could, like, buy life insurance in the airport. I remember being told that. Like, you could walk in and be like, yeah, I'll take some life insurance because you're, like, about to get on a plane. So if, like, you die, you get life
that's
insurance.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh, God. I hope I'm not talking out my ass. I hope that's true.
So after boarding the airplane, the man lit a cigarette. He ordered a bourbon and soda. And as the plane was taking off, he handed a folded-up note to the 23-year-old flight attendant, Florence Schaffner. So she put the envelope in her pocket because she thought that it was just another man giving her her phone number, because this happened to her a lot in the 70s. She's a young, pretty flight attendant. You know, men would hit on her, slide her note, so she's like, okay, I'll just stick this in with the others. But the man told her, "Miss, I think you better read that note." So she quickly read it, and the note said, quote, "Miss, I'm hijacking this plane. I have a bomb. Sit next to me." So she sits down next to him, and she's like, "Are you kidding?" And he assured her that he was serious and this was real. He opened his briefcase, and he showed her bundles of red sticks tied with wire. So Florence called to another flight attendant, 20-year-old Tina Mucklow, who also saw the bomb. So Cooper then demanded $200,000, 4 parachutes, and a refueling truck in Seattle. He wrote these demands on a piece of paper, which Florence took to the pilot, William Scott. So Scott reported to the control tower what was happening, and plane hijackings were fairly common in these days. Like, it wasn't, like, unusual. They were just like, okay, here we go again. But it was unusual for it to be, like, a monetary incentive, because they were usually for political reasons. Like, they were, like, hijacking the plane to Cuba or something like that. It wasn't ever just, oh, I just want personal money. So the FBI was notified, who then reached out to the president of the airline, Northwest Orient, who agreed that he would pay the $200,000 ransom. So the FBI told the pilot to cooperate with the hijackers' demands. So the news did soon leak to the press, and one journalist accidentally called the hijacker D.B. Cooper instead of Dan Cooper, and as you know, this name would forever stick with this incident. So D.B. Cooper was described by witnesses as being somewhere between 35 and 50 years old, between 5'10" and 6 feet, with olive skin or maybe a Latino appearance, but having no particular accent. The flight attendants that he spoke with said that he spoke very intelligently and in a low voice. So Florence tried to make conversation with him and asked him why he chose this particular airline, and he responded, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airline, it's just because I have a grudge." So Cooper did pay for his drinks and even attempted to tip the flight attendants and even offered one of them a cigarette. They all said that he was very polite and calm, like he's hijacking the plane, but he wasn't angry or yelling or anything, so...
He was just chill, like sitting there probably smoking a cigarette, because you could do that then, just being like, just want money, I guess. Like,
just smoking his cigarette and his bourbon soda, just having a good time.
Which is kind of crazy too. Like, if you have a bomb and you're like hijacking a plane and getting this whole, like, getting the FBI involved, and you're just sitting there like, yep, like, that is kind of creepy.
Just very chill. So, per Cooper's instructions, the flight landed on a remote runway at the SeaTac airport 2.5 hours after takeoff. Again, this was from Portland to Seattle. You can almost drive there in that time. So this was supposed to have been a 30-minute flight, and the flight crew told passengers that they were having mechanical issues that prevented them from landing on time. So, if I'm on a 30-minute flight, and we spend 2.5 hours in the air because there's an issue and we can't land, I don't feel like I would be very calm. So I'm very surprised that there were not more issues with the other passengers, that they all appeared to just be calm with this situation. But again, it was the 70s, so everybody's just smoking a cigarette, having a drink on the plane. Maybe they don't care.
Yeah. Because that happened to me kind of once. It was not this extreme, where I was, like, flying to New York, and they were like, hey, some, like, tower, like, satellite tower went down at, like, one of the New York airports, and we were flying into Newark, but no planes could come in or out of any of the 3 airports, and so we literally just had to circle Philadelphia, and I was so sick. I was sick as a dog, because we were, like, kind of, like, just going in a circle, and it was, like, miserable, and that was for, like, 20 minutes we had to do that, not even, like, this long, and so, yeah, I'd be like, excuse me, why are we still on this plane?
And, like, okay, so 2 hours extra. Like, did you just circle the entire time, or did you just, like, fly back and then fly back? I mean, you could have made that trip 4 times. Like, I don't know what the exact flight path was, but, you know, they were in the air for 2.5 hours. So SeaTac Airport did divert all other flights from landing at SeaTac at that time, so there would only be this one flight coming in, and there's nothing else, you know, in the way to prevent anyone else from being involved in this situation. So authorities arrived with a bag of $200,000 in $20 bills and the 4 parachutes. So a lot of people believe that he requested 4 parachutes so that the authorities would think he was going to force a hostage to jump with him, and therefore they wouldn't damage any of the parachutes and hinder the safety of the innocent passenger, which, I mean, is, like, super smart if that was his plan. So, however, one of the parachutes they grabbed was a training dummy parachute that didn't open, and it even had a big X marked on it to, like, signify that it wasn't going to open. But I guess if you don't know that's what that means, you wouldn't know that. But if I saw a parachute that had a big X on it, I might be a little hesitant to use it.
Yeah.
And another of the parachutes was a military parachute, which means that it's not able to be steered. So it still worked, but you couldn't, like, guide it in a certain direction. You could basically just jump and land. So the money was taken from a special vault at the bank where all the serial numbers had been previously recorded so that money could be used in case of a bank robbery. So it was just, like, stored away to where if somebody came in to rob the bank, they would grab that money because it could all easily be tracked. So this was the money that they chose to use for the hijacking. So the flight attendant Tina was allowed off the plane to retrieve the demanded items, and Cooper said that he would let the passengers go when she returned. So the plane was refueled, and he released the passengers, again, who were unaware of this whole event, and 2 of the flight attendants, including Florence, after Tina returned with the items. And during this time, Cooper continued to order drinks. He even ordered food for the crew during the refueling. He attempted to tip Tina with a large amount of the bills, but she told him no tipping was allowed. So
I'd be like, I'm taking that money. I don't care.
I earned this today, okay? Cooper told the pilot to fly to Mexico City at the minimum speed possible, which was 200 miles per hour, no higher than 10,000 feet, and with the wingtips at 15 degrees. So having the wingtips at 15 degrees was a unique feature of the Boeing 727, which was the plane that they were on. So this pointed to the theory that this man probably had extensive knowledge of this particular aircraft. So when the pilot told him that they didn't have enough fuel to make it all the way to Mexico City, he agreed to fly towards Reno. Because he's like, I don't really care where we're going. I'm getting off this plane, clearly, because I got the parachutes, but just go in that direction.
Yeah.
So 15 minutes after takeoff, Cooper asked the flight attendant Tina to help him lower the aft staircase. So at this time, this was only one of 2 types of planes that had a rear staircase that allowed passengers to exit from, like, the back of the plane. Again, this would point to the fact that maybe he knew some about this specific plane that he chose. So Tina argued that it was too dangerous, and he was like, okay, I'll just do it myself, go in the cockpit and stay with the others, because that's where the rest of the flight crew was at this time. So Tina watched through a peephole as Cooper strapped on the parachutes, arranged the ransom money, like, around his waist. I think they said that he cut up one of the parachutes and, like, tied it, like, around the money around his waist to, like, hold it in so he could be hands-free. And then he disappeared, but no one actually saw Cooper jump out of the plane. But at 8:00 p.m., a warning light told the pilot that the rear staircase had been lowered, and the rear of the plane lurched upwards at 8:13 p.m. So it is believed that that's the exact time that he jumped. So at this time, the plane was over a heavily wooded area with 2 major rivers and a lake. It was dark, raining, and temperatures were below freezing. So when the plane landed in Reno, Cooper was nowhere to be found, and all that remained were a few cigarette butts, his black clip-on tie, and the remaining parachute. So Cooper had jumped with the dummy parachute and the military parachute. So authorities searched 4 states for signs of Cooper or his body. The tie was later tested and found to contain rare metal particles on it, leading some to believe that he worked in specialized electronics or in the airplane industry. So D.B. Cooper has never been seen alive since, and his true identity has never been discovered. So many believe a man could not have survived the jump in those conditions, especially because Cooper was underdressed. Like, he wasn't wearing winter clothes or shoes or anything that would allow him to survive in the wilderness in these conditions for even a short amount of time. And none of the bills from the ransom money have ever made it into circulation. So the FBI has investigated at least 1,000 people in connection with this hijacking. Some believe that Cooper may have been an experienced skydiver or a paratrooper, but jumping from a plane in poor conditions wearing inadequate clothing would probably suggest otherwise. Also, using a dummy parachute that did not open and a military parachute that could not be steered would also suggest that he was not an experienced paratrooper.
So the other 2 parachutes were just like normal parachutes,
yes.
Right? Like, he just literally picked the wrong 2.
Yep.
That sucks.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, like you had a 50-50 chance there.
Yeah.
And like I said,
So
I'm pretty sure they said that he cut up one of the other 2 parachutes to use to like steer the money, to like contain the money on himself. So I'm like, you could have used that one to jump. You could have cut the one with the big X if you just needed fabric. And some people believe that he may have had an accomplice waiting for him on the ground, and that's why he was able to get away without leaving any evidence. But like we said, he just said to fly to Mexico City, and when they said they couldn't do that, he's like, okay, well, like, Reno's fine, whatever. Like, he didn't care where they were going, and he didn't tell them to go, like, a specific route or anything. So it really doesn't make sense that he would have had an accomplice waiting at a specific location, because he didn't seem that planned out about where he was going to jump. So following this event, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered what were called Cooper vanes to be installed on all Boeing 727s. So a Cooper vane is basically a small latch fitted to the outside of all planes with rear stairs to prevent them from being opened mid-flight. So like, we're going to make sure that this never happens again. So you got to put these Cooper vanes on all these things now.
Probably a good idea, because I mean, I can't see many reasons a staircase needs to be opened mid-flight.
No, that doesn't seem like a solid plan. So only one piece of physical evidence has ever been recovered since the hijacking. So in 1980, a family found $5,800 of the ransom money on a beach of the Columbia River. So remember, those serial numbers were tracked, so they did know for sure that this money was given to D.B. Cooper. So this could indicate where Cooper might have landed or, ended up somehow. And it did seem further away from the area that they most likely thought that he was. So, but again, it could have floated down there. Who knows? But 6 years after the money was found, the little boy who discovered it was allowed to keep $2,760 of it. So that was nice. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, he sold 15 of those $20 bills online for $37,433. So
making a profit.
He lucked out finding that money.
He definitely did. So there are many theories about D.B. Cooper. So I think the number one theory with D.B. Cooper in general is that he's likely dead. He likely died when he jumped out of the plane.
Yeah.
Remains haven't been found. Like, it's kind of a mystery. That's usually everyone's number one theory. They say money was never in circulation. He was never found. Or they assume he's dead.
Because that's the thing. If you went to all the trouble to hijack a plane only for $200,000, you didn't really get anything else out of it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you spend that $200,000? Like, what would you do with that money if you hijacked the plane and then just never spent it? So, to me, that's pretty clear that he's likely dead. But it's also fun to speculate who he might have been or could have been had he still lived.
Yeah, and we have quite a few people who they seriously looked into. So, less than 5 months after Cooper's hijacking, a man named Richard Floyd McCoy hijacked a plane and parachuted out of it with $500,000 in ransom money, which I looked up would be $3,228,316 today, which is a lot of money.
So it's quite a lot of money.
So McCoy was a former Green Beret in Vietnam. He was captured, escaped from prison, and then killed in a shootout with the FBI. So He's just wilding it out there. Some believe McCoy was also D.B. Cooper, but others believe it was just a copycat. And it'd be really strange for Cooper to attempt another hijacking so soon after the successful one. And I looked up, and the $200,000 in 1971 would be $1,291,326 today. So clearly, like, that's probably enough money for the rest of your life. Like,
you don't need to do it again 5 months later.
Yeah. And especially, like, you know, if you did get away with it successfully the first time, like, why would you even chance it when you have the money?
Yeah.
So it seems really unlikely. That's quite a bit of money to just, like, go again and, like, try to get higher money. So the FBI said McCoy didn't match the physical descriptions of Cooper given by the flight attendants, and McCoy's family also reported he was home for Thanksgiving in 1971, so this really just kind of seems like a copycat. So pilot and paratrooper Robert Rackstraw was arrested for grand theft, writing $75,000 worth of bad checks, and the murder of his stepfather during the 1970s, among other crimes. Those are just the top ones, I guess.
The big ones.
Yeah. He attempted to fake his own death in 1978 by logging a false Mayday call from a rented airplane, but was convicted of check fraud and theft of an airplane and spent 2 years in prison. Many believe he could have been the infamous D.B. Cooper as well, but why are you writing bad checks if you have like $1 million in that money?
Yeah, that's the thing.
So this one is probably one of the most detailed suspects. So Jeffrey Gray released an article in 2007 titled Unmasking D.B. Cooper, and he subsequently wrote a book called Skyjack, The Hunt for D.B. Cooper. I did not read it, but I want to now.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
And he offered a detailed look into the case. So Gray was the first reporter given access to the FBI files, so he had a lot of details on the case. Like, they were like, he went into detail about, like, everything. So he got kind of an unusual start to this case. So Lyle Christensen had contacted a New York detective and told him he was convinced his late brother Kenneth was D.B. Cooper. So Kenneth Christensen was a paratrooper in the military. His first deployment had come right after World War II. So after he left the military, he did work as a mechanic, flight attendant, and purser for Northwest Orient Airlines. So clearly he's very, you know, knowledgeable with the airlines and stuff like that. Like, he kind of knows what he's talking about. And it did seem like D.B. Cooper knew a lot about the airlines and the plane itself. So the year after the D.B. Cooper hijacking, reports say Kenneth bought a house in cash despite making a modest income at the time. It was a modest house, it wasn't a mansion, and I also find sources disagreeing with this. So some say he just bought a house in general, and others say he bought it in cash. So I'm not really sure if, like, the in cash was, like, exaggerated to be like, it's him, he bought a house in cash.
Yeah, just to, like, add to the
or
speculation. Yeah,
because his brother did not say he bought it in cash, just that he bought it. So I don't know which is which, but Kenneth also loved bourbon, which D.B. Cooper did order, but also I'm sure a lot of people ordered bourbon at the time. I don't think that's really the nail in the coffin there. So
that's the clue.
Oh my God, he loves bourbon. It's him. So on his deathbed in 1994, he supposedly told his brother, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you." And his brother responded to him, "I don't care what it is. You cannot tell me about it. We all love you." But, like, if my sister's trying to make a deathbed confession, like, you better tell me what you did. I want to know.
I'm going to be prying for some details. I'm not just going to be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Tell me everything.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I do care. I love you. Tell me.
Like, I'll love you no matter what, but you have to tell me what it is.
Especially since Lyle did go on to be like, I think Kenneth is it. And I'm like, well, if you'd let him confess on his deathbed, you'd know. His brother also believed he looked like the sketch of D.B. Cooper, and photos of Kenneth were shown to the flight attendant, Florence, and she said he did look similar, but she couldn't, like, positively identify him and be like, 100% that's him. Mm-hmm. And again, we talked about how the cash isn't in circulation, so if he did buy the house with cash, that money should be in circulation. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to buy a house and cash and then be like, we'll just put this in a drawer. We're not going to spend that.
Like, no, we'll never use that. And, I mean, also if you had somehow, like, exchanged your money for other money, like, then that money would still be in circulation somewhere. So it's like, okay, buying the house in cash isn't really relevant if we know that money's never been used anywhere.
Yeah, like he could have just, gotten a lucky lottery ticket or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
The FBI also has reservations about Kenneth being D.B. Cooper. They say that Gray points out Kenneth was a paratrooper, and the FBI does believe he could have been one. Kenneth was also a little shorter and slighter than eyewitness descriptions. Again, eyewitness testimony is not the greatest as well. I mean, we're really kind of going off these 2 flight attendants since none of the other passengers knew what was happening. Like, you wouldn't, if you think it's a normal flight, you're really not going to be paying attention to a random guy like the flight attendants did. This is my favorite little part. Kenneth was also balding, while D.B. Cooper had hair. But some people are like, well, he could have worn a toupee. So I think that toupee would have flown off when he jumped out of the plane.
Well, maybe not. I was going to say, maybe it even, like, would have flown back into the plane, but probably not. It probably just would have, like, flown away, and I'm sure they never found it. But,
It's just funny, the FBI being like, no, he's balding. Might not be it. But
could have been a toupee.
Yeah, so his brother is really convinced it was him, and then there are some similarities, but we don't know if it's him, basically. So in 2011, a woman named Marla Cooper publicly suggested that her late uncle, Lynn Doyle Cooper, or LD, was D.B. Cooper. LD Cooper? D.B. Cooper? Huh? So her mother, Grace Haley, was LD's sister and agrees with her daughter's theory and even had some evidence to back it up. So Grace's statements are one reason why the FBI did believe the statement in general could be credible. So I guess the evidence she did bring, they were like, okay, maybe there is some, like, it could be, basically. So Grace said she always just had a gut feeling about LD, and it was more what he didn't do that made her suspicious rather than what he did. So, don't really know. Anytime the topic of D.B. Cooper came up, he immediately cut it off. Which I do find weird because, I mean, I'm sure everyone is talking about, like, hey, this guy just hijacked a plane, got money, nobody knows where he is. Like, kind of weird that you'd be like, nope, let's not talk about that. Nope. Off limits. So it's like...
Especially at that time, like you said, where it was so fresh. I mean, here we are 49 years later, and it's still being talked about all the time. So it's, like, clearly something that would be discussed. So, yeah, it would be weird that he would just be like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about that really interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's like... I'm trying to think of something, like, relevant. Kind of like the Chris Watts case now. I mean, it's not an unsolved case, but if someone's, like, you start talking about it or, like, theories, if you didn't know who it was, and someone's just like, nope, we're not talking about this. Yeah. Like, what? Everybody's talking about this.
Yeah.
So, Grace said LD grew up in Sisters, Oregon, and he was really familiar with the area where D.B. Cooper would have jumped. And this is also consistent with the FBI's theory. Like, they really believed he knew the Pacific Northwest. Like, it had to be someone from there, not some guy from, like, Maine coming out, like, jumping out.
Yeah.
LD was also a war veteran, and the FBI does believe D.B. Cooper could have a military background. He was also a logger and outdoorsman, and Grace believes he would be tough enough to jump out of a plane into the wilderness. Like, he was very familiar with the outdoors, stuff like that. Which is kind of weird, like, why wouldn't you, dress better, or bring clothes that you could, like, change into. Like, I get maybe you were trying to be, like, sly on the plane and, like, fit in, but, like, why are you jumping out in, like, a suit?
I mean, because also, like, you're on a plane, no one's checking bags then. Like, you could have a bag of, like, whatever you want to change into. It's not like you need to, like, be slick to get on the plane, and, it doesn't...
I mean, he did take his clip-off tie off. Like, maybe he did change, because they...
True.
They just left, and they didn't see him jump, so maybe he had some clothes, and he just, like, threw the tie off, thought he grabbed it. You never know.
That's true. I also thought it was really funny that this, like, very sleek man was wearing a clip-on tie. I don't know. That just...
Especially in the 70s. Like, I feel like that would have been, like, a super no-no.
Stuff You Should Know did a live episode about this, and I I think it was Josh, said a joke that cracked, like I literally laughed out loud, it cracked me up, but when he talked about the clip-on tie, and he was like, and that was his second biggest surprise of the day. Just thought that was really funny.
So I've given, some kind of generals, and now this is where the theory really gets interesting. So he showed up to a family Thanksgiving gathering in 1971 looking quite beat up. And he was like, I was in a car accident. And they were like, okay. Sure, likely story. So Marla Cooper did give the FBI a guitar strap that belonged to LD to try and obtain fingerprints, but they couldn't lift any fingerprints from the guitar strap. Mm-hmm. So there was later DNA evidence pulled from that tie that was left on the plane, mm-hmm. And they assumed that to be of D.B. Cooper, but I also read that there was also the partial sample came from 3 people on the tie, so
yeah, it's
kind of muddled, I guess might be a good word. So they compared LD's DNA to the DNA on this tie, and it didn't match, but the FBI says that doesn't necessarily rule him out as a suspect. Mm-hmm. I don't really know why, because they usually use the DNA just to rule out people and less so to find a person. But even though it didn't match, they said it doesn't rule him out. I don't know what they know that I don't know, but...
Well, that's the thing, too. If they have, such compelling evidence otherwise, they may be okay, maybe this 40-year-old DNA isn't enough to say for sure that this isn't him. Because, like you said, there were 3 partial profiles. It's also been... Okay, who knows exactly how it's been stored for the last... At this point, it was 35, 40 years from that time to the time they tested it.
Yeah, I think the tie was tested in 2001. So that'd been 30.
Okay, so 30 years. Yeah. Which, is still a good amount of time to not know how it was preserved or exactly whose DNA was on the tie to begin with. And maybe there's just a lot of questions about the validity of it, and they have such compelling evidence otherwise that it's okay, we'll still consider him.
Yeah, and I know, we kind of talked about in our DNA episode, how you have different little, markers. So maybe they have certain markers and, those markers are common. I don't know.
Yeah.
Science.
Definitely.
So Dwayne Weber was another D.B. Cooper suspect. So Dwayne Weber was hospitalized in Florida with kidney disease, and he notioned to his wife of 17 years to come close so he could tell her something. He said, I have a secret to tell you. I'm Dan Cooper. Dum dum dum.
Oh.
Dwayne did die in 1995, but his wife, Jo, tried to piece things together. So she's like, that's weird. So Jo recalled Dwayne having nightmares and talking in his sleep about leaving fingerprints on the plane. So very odd nightmare to have.
Yeah, don't think I've ever had that one before.
He also had an old knee injury that he claimed came from jumping out of a plane. So,
okay.
And Jo did end up saying, I can't walk away from it. Why would he have an old Northwest airline ticket, which I guess he had a ticket? It didn't reference it in the source specifically, but she said that, so I'm assuming he did. Why would he take me to a place where eventually the money was found? Why all of this? There's too many pieces of the puzzle that fit. So I guess there were things that they did together that really tied to D.B. Cooper. So a former FBI agent on the case, Ralph Himmelsbach, believed her story. Apparently, Dwayne even matched the physical description and had a criminal history, but DNA did rule Dwayne out. But some wonder if it's, accurate. Like I said before, LD's DNA didn't match, but they're not ruling him out. So this one, they're ruling him out, and we don't really know why, to say. It seems mostly that Dwayne's no longer a suspect, but a lot of people, armchair detectives, kind of believe he could still be D.B. Cooper. So now we have our first female suspect.
Oh.
So, could D.B. Cooper be a woman? Authors Pat and Ron Foreman say their friend Barbara Dayton confessed to them that she was D.B. Cooper, but they say she later recanted it. So I don't know. So Barbara was a World War II veteran, and Barbara did receive the first gender-confirming surgery in Washington in 1969.
Oh, wow.
The Foremans believe she could have been D.B. Cooper in disguise by, quote, emphasis on that, reverting to her male persona, which It's kind of insulting.
Yep.
Like, what?
That's not how that works.
Yeah. So, but Barbara was a very highly skilled pilot, parachutist, and they said that she was just completely fearless, even to the point of reckless sometimes. Like, she would just, like, just do things that's like, okay, that might be a little reckless. Like, calm down. And she was also a proficient machinist and explosive expert, all skills D.B. Cooper displayed during the hijacking. But I kind of think also, like, in the 70s, it was a lot closer to, like, World War II and the Vietnam War. I feel like maybe a lot more had been in the Army.
Yeah.
And probably would have, you know, had this training as well. Like, more so than I would say today.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Could be talking out my ass again. So, the Foremans say Barbara never spent the money and only did the crime to satisfy personal issues relating to her gender-confirming surgery, which again is insulting, and again I have altered the words to make them less offensive, and it's still offensive. Honestly, this theory just seems far-fetched to me. It seems kind of like, oh, our friend is a great pilot. She's D.B. Cooper. Like, okay. I mean, it makes it interesting because there's like a woman suspect, but...
Yeah. But we also know all the time that people confess to things that they don't do for whatever reason, so...
You're telling me that you guys haven't gotten drunk and just went, I'm D.B. Cooper.
Courtney does it every time.
Every time.
Which, going back to Dwayne Weber, where you said that he confessed to his wife, and I'm like, what if he was just like this big prankster, and he's like, you know what, before I die, I'm just gonna get her one last time, I'm gonna confess to this crime that I had nothing to do with, just to keep her busy, you know?
Yeah, after Joe dies, Dwayne's like, bitch, I was kidding!
Gotcha.
This is kind of off topic, but I just finished watching New Girl, and like one of the characters in the later seasons, her name's Rhonda, and she does these stupid pranks, and she's like, you just got Rhonda'd. So that's what I'm thinking, like, you just got Dwayne'd.
I just got Dwayne'd.
Whew. Okay, so William Gossett was described as a quirky guy with a military background, which I really hope I'm never described as quirky. Anyway. It seems like what people say when they're trying to not be insulting.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can think of a few people that I would like lovingly describe as quirky, you know?
Okay. I don't think people were lovingly describing this guy as quirky.
Probably not.
So he had the physical characteristics to match D.B. Cooper. He died in 2003 and told both of his sons several times that he was the hijacker. Again, maybe he was just trying to prank them. I don't know. His son Kirk recalls a strange trip to Vancouver, Canada with his father 2 years after the hijacking. And he thought possibly it was to hide the money in a safety deposit box there. But I'm like, why didn't you go back? Or like, why would you like take all this money just to hide it like in the woods? I don't know. That's the thing to me.
Yeah. Like, did you plan on using it later and then you didn't? Or
I mean,
what?
maybe D.B. Cooper didn't care about the money. He just wanted to say he did it. And he was like, all right, I'm just going to go hide this money. Like, I mean, it makes sense because, I mean, they would have tracked the money if he had used it.
Yeah.
So the FBI is pretty skeptical of these claims, believing there's just no, like, actual links other than the statements. Others disagree, like a Washington lawyer, Galen Cook. He's been studying the case, and he even submitted a fingerprint of Gossett's to the FBI, hoping to see if it matches D.B. Cooper's, and he does plan to publish a book. Gossett did have military experience, including wilderness survival, and did resemble the composite sketch, which just kind of makes me wonder, you know how sometimes, like, men just kind of look alike? Like, you know what I mean? You can have certain features, it's like, okay, like, you all kind of look alike. Like, have you ever seen, like, a frat party? Like, they all look alike.
Especially in 1971 with this, like, dapper-looking guy in his, like, suit and his dark hair. And he just has very, like, characteristic features of the times, too, you know? So it's hard to, like...
There was no, like, he had a really big crooked nose. He was missing 3 teeth. Like... It was just very, like, ordinary. Sorry, D.B. Cooper. I don't mean to insult you by calling you ordinary. So, this one is my personal favorite because it's just wild. So people suspect John List. So many of us know John List as the man who murdered his family in 1971, which is the same year D.B. Cooper hijacked the plane. He was eventually captured in 1989 after living under a false identity for 17 years. So could he be D.B. Cooper? It's really, really unlikely. The FBI says he's a suspect, but they were like, basically everyone's a suspect.
Yeah, because we just have no idea.
Yeah. FBI agent Ralph Himmelsbach believes Cooper's dead, but he says John List warrants investigating, because, why not? Mm-hmm. They believe D.B. Cooper would have been in his mid-40s, and List was 44 at the time. List is about the same height, weight, and wore glasses like Cooper. List also spent the last $200,000 of his mother's saving account before the murders of his family, and Cooper did demand $200,000 in his hijacking. So there are some, pretty good similarities. I mean, it's pretty outlandish, but it's also pretty fun.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll do John List soon, because Kevin's father doesn't really have a connection, but he grew up in the same, around the same city where John List killed his family, and they would always, go to the house and be like, that's where that guy murdered his family.
All right, kids, go join our picnic now.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, DNA was extracted from the tie D.B. Cooper left on the plane in 2001, and it has been able to rule out some suspects, but it's not really leading to any specific leads. And the FBI did continue to actively investigate the D.B. Cooper hijacking until July 8th, 2016, at which time funds were reallocated to other investigations. It does remain the only unsolved hijacking case in the history of commercial aviation, and that is the insane, mysterious, lot of questions hijacking by D.B. Cooper.
Yes, so this one was so much fun to research. Somebody still probably died, but it was a little bit more lighthearted than some of the other ones that we've done.
There's, no murder, nobody got hurt, per se. I mean, obviously, the flight attendants might have had, a little trauma after that, and
probably
$200,000 did just go missing, but it's still a lot lighter than some of the cases we've been handling.
Yeah, and unsolved mysteries are always fun, and ones where you have theories of who could it have been, and what about this person, and, so it was fun to research, and it was fun to do a timely episode, knowing that it happened 49 years ago today, if you're listening to this on release day, which I got really excited when we were looking it up, because I thought it was going to be the 50th anniversary. But then I was like, wait, it's still 2020. It's not 2021 yet. So
I wish it was 2021. I'm just ready to hit the fast forward button.
Yes. But definitely let us know your thoughts on D.B. Cooper. So who do you guys think it was? Do you think he survived? What do you think? Let us know your D.B. Cooper theories.
Yeah, and if you liked this and there's other plane hijackings, bank robberies, train hijackings. I guess you can hijack a train. I don't really know. It's on a rail. It's only going one place. But if there's any stories like that you're like, I love this, do this one. We'll do it.
Yeah.
I like to do it. It's fun. It's nice. 2020's kind of been heavy in general, and especially with the election, it's been pretty heavy with social media is not an escape anymore. There's a lot going on. And so this was kind of fun to do. So
yeah, this was a good little distraction this week. So speaking of other distractions, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
Okay, my perk of the week is I finally we got everything out and cleaned at the old apartment. Which
yay! I
have been dreading so badly. So we had a bit of overlap with apartments, and so once we were able to move in this one, we were like, bye old apartment. So finally, we went and we threw away the stuff that we didn't want and just cleaned up. So hopefully we get our security deposit back and all that. So I'm just happy that's done. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness, because I was dreading it very much so. But it's done, and Kevin will take the keys back tomorrow, and we'll say goodbye to the little Manor View apartment for eternity. So
and that's always fun when you can kind of wrap up that chapter and be like, okay, I'm done with this. Like, I got everything cleaned out. Like, because it always sucks when you have that, like, lingering, like, thing to do, you know? And it's like, I have to get to that. I have to get to that. So it's always nice when you can be like, okay, and that is done.
Yeah. And I always I'm a very sentimental person. Like, Kevin's like, shut up. But I'm very sentimental. And I was like, oh, but this apartment treated so well. And he's like, did it? Yes, it did. And he's like, the new apartment's better. Okay, I know that. But let me just say goodbye to this. Because he makes fun of me. Because, like, when he moved out of his old apartment, I was like, but this is the apartment we said I love you in. He's like, shut up. I'm like, sorry. So... But
yeah, I'm the same way though, you know. Except I don't think I'll feel that way about this house because I'm like, this house sucks. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think also, like, the last apartment was, like, the first apartment, like, I actually, like, lived in. Like, that was, like, my first, like, apartment, like, moving out with my parents. And, like, that's kind of, like, where, like, we didn't get engaged in the apartment, but that's, like, what happened. So, like, so much happened in that apartment. And it's like, oh, my gosh, I'm sad. But I'm also kind of happy because... I like our new apartment better. But.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so Jaclyn, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week, I just finished reading this book called Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen McManus. So it's like a young adult book, but it's like murdery and everything. So it's fiction.
It's a good book.
Yeah, it's so good. But it was a good little, like, you know, obviously we enjoy crime stories and murder mysteries and things, but, you know, a little bit lighthearted versus like, oh, this actually happened to people. So sometimes it's nice to go the fiction route, and, you know, I always love a good young adult book anyway, and it was one that I had been on hold for at the library, and then it was available, and then I read it in like a day and a half because it was just super good and I couldn't put it down. So that is my perk of the week and recommendation.
Yeah, her other book, One of Us is Lying.
Yep.
Lying. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sequel to it.
I don't think I've read the sequel.
It was good. It was like a loose sequel, if that makes sense. Like, it's the same city, and like people are referenced. I think one of the characters in the sequel is like the sister of one of the girls from the first one, so it kind of references them, but it's not necessarily like the same people and their storyline continued. But it was pretty good, yeah. I've liked her books. They've been, like, very entertaining. I like young adult because usually they're like, we know teenagers. We got to keep this fast-paced.
Yes.
And so I like that because it's, like, an easy read.
Yes, definitely.
But, yeah. If you have book recommendations or want to hear our recommendations, you can find us on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod, at Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast, at Twitter at CAF Crimes Pod, that's CAF Crimes Pod, and you can also just send us an old-fashioned email at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com, and we plugged it like 4 times at the beginning, but you could also come just have a discussion with us in a monthly Google Hangout or a Q&A at patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes.
And again, make sure you go head on over to Apple Podcast and leave us a review on every phone you have available at your disposal, and let us know. And eventually, when we reach 50 of those, someone will get a sticker, a pin, and a $10 gift card to a coffee shop of your choice. So make sure that you guys head on over and do that as well.
Yeah, and in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.